You'll go ham for these holiday-inspired sausages. For this recipe, I'm going to be making a holiday ham-style sausage. I'm going to be taking those flavor profiles with our ham sausage seasoning and adding a few inclusions that are really going to elevate our sausage. I'm going to be adding canned pineapple and maraschino cherries to up the sweetness, but still using that smoke and cure flavor in a traditional ham. Starting the sausage with a bone-in pork butt. This is so easy to find in your local grocery store and it lends itself really well to sausage. So that's where we're gonna start. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna start taking all this meat off the bone, and then we're gonna get it nice and cold before we grind it. And at the same time, we're gonna be weighing it out so that we can get our proportions right for the amount of seasoning we need. We're gonna cut the pork down into grinder-sized pieces so they go through our chute really easily. Now another thing is I already have my casings soaking in lukewarm water so that they're nice and pliable once I'm ready to stuff. They do need at least 45 minutes, I would say closer to an hour, hour and a half, soaking in that water. And that'll give it a last rinse, and it'll make those casings really easy for us to work with. Now that I have the pork all broken down, I'm gonna set this in the freezer, hopefully for about 20 to 25 minutes, get a nice chill on this meat before we start the grind. In the meantime, I'm gonna get some of our inclusions ready. Now for our inclusions on our ham sausage, we are going to be using some classic toppings that you would see on a baked ham or a smoked ham, and that is pineapple and cherries. We're going to be using canned pineapple, and we're going to dice this to a little bit smaller so that it fits in our sausage, along with cutting down some maraschino cherries. So we'll start with the pineapple, and we're going to cut it to probably about a 1/2 inch dice, and we're going for a 10% inclusion. We are also going to be saving the juice or the syrup that the pineapple comes in, because we will use that as our liquid addition to help hydrate and give ourselves a nice juicy sausage. Maraschino cherries are very, very sweet, so we're going to have a much lower inclusion rate on these. We're going to go for about 2.5%. What we're looking for is more of that speckled bright red color throughout our sausage, and I think 2.5% will get us right where we want to be. We've got our inclusions all chopped up, so I'm going to set these in the fridge to get them nice and cold before we fold them into our meat block, and we're going to start our first grind. I want to measure this now because after the first grind, we're going to start mixing this in and let that grinder do some of the mixing work for us throughout our second and our third grind. Now out of the freezer, this is hardened up a little bit, which is going to be perfect for our grind. Freezing this is going to help us avoid any smearing in the grinding and mixing process. And that way we decide when our proteins and fats bind together in our mixing. And for our first grind, we're going to be using a 3/8 inch plate, after which we're going to switch it out to a 3/16 and grind it twice. We're going to go for a slightly more emulsified product. Not a full emulsification, but it's going to be a lot smoother than a typical coarse cut sausage that I've made in the past. So let's get started with our 3/8 grind. All right, first grind done. And now we're going to add in our seasonings. We're just going to sprinkle this in gently and very gently kind of stir it together. Again, this is going to get ground twice more, so we don't need to work it in too much. We're going to let that grinder do some of that mixing for us, but we want to start distributing the seasoning throughout our meat block. And now I'm going to reset our grinder and we'll go for our second grind. Now I'm just going to throw this back in the hopper up top. No need to change the blade because we're going to stick with the 3/16. We're going to go for one more grind. Really smooth out our meat block. It's nice and tacky already, so once we start mixing, that protein extraction is going to take a really nice hold on our meat block. Right now, I'm going to put a piece of bread through our auger to push out all the meat possible before we start mixing in our cure and our inclusions. I have our cure measured out for our batch size, and I reserved the syrup that the pineapple came in, and this is what we're going to use for our liquid. So I'm going to add the cure, stir this up nice. Adding cure to liquid before you add it to the meat block really helps distribute it evenly. So we'll get that in there. And we're going to start mixing to get that cure incorporated before we add in our inclusions. Because our inclusions are a little more delicate, and we're just going to fold those in. But we want the cure to be evenly distributed first, because that is a more important part of this mixing process. And reserving that pineapple juice or that syrup that the pineapple came in, it's going to give us an added pop of sweetness. In with our pineapple, and in with our cherries. Now we're going to fold this together until it's just barely incorporated. We don't want to break down those inclusions any more than they already are. I think we've got a nice mix in with our inclusions now, so it's time to case our sausage. We're going to load up our hopper with our meat block, always starting in the center and working the meat out towards the walls to avoid air pockets. So I'm going to start the plunger down and work the meat block into the horn until it's just about 90% of the way through. And then I'll back off the pressure and we'll start loading on our casings. There it is, back off the pressure. And for our casings, we're using a 32 to 35 millimeter natural hog casing. It's one of my favorites to work with. It's a good size, and I find that they just make sense for a lot of different types of sausage, so I like using them. These have been soaking for about an hour and a half at this point, which is ideal. We're going to find our end of our casing, open it up, and start pulling some of that water through to give it one final rinse. It'll help us untangle the casing, and it'll help us lube up the horn here a little bit as it gets threaded on as well. Towards the end, give yourself about an inch leeway at the end. Back off the pressure. Cut the casing. I'm going to break down our stuffer and then we'll be ready to link up, at which point we'll set them in the fridge overnight before we smoke tomorrow. Now I'm just kind of getting rid of some of the more obvious air pockets before I link up here. And we're going to do a standard size link, about 7 inches. First one, twist toward. Second, twist away, and then we'll start our skip process. Pinch, pinch, twist, and there we go, just on down the line. Now we'll go through with that sausage pricker, get out some of those other smaller air bubbles that might be a little more obvious now that we've put some pressure on the meat block. And these look pretty cool. You can already see the inclusions through the casings. I'm really curious to see what this looks like once it's nice and smoked. Now we're all done for today. When I cure sausage for smoking, I like to let it sit in the fridge overnight. That helps the cure develop on the meat, helps develop our flavor profile, but it also starts to dry out the casings. When you dry out the casings, you create that all-important pellicle, which really helps in smoke absorption. It's smoking day. Our sausages have been resting and developing in the fridge overnight. They're dried out a little bit to start forming that pellicle, and I've got a preheated smoker set at 120 degrees outside. We're going to take our sausages outside, hang them on our smoke sticks, and start our drying cycle. Now for the smoke cycle, we're going to start at that 120 degrees for about an hour, and then we're going to gradually increase the temperature every hour until our sausages hit an internal temperature of 150 degrees. Click on the links to check out the recipe and find the specific smoke schedule. After smoking our sausages, I took them out and I let them rest at room temperature for about half an hour. Then I threw them on a tray and into the fridge overnight to completely cool. We are left with a beautiful, nice colored sausage here. I'm really excited to see how these taste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink all these, get rid of some of this extra casing that is in between the links, and then I'm going to grill them up. I'm going to go for indirect heat when I grill these up, so I can bring them up to temperature a little slower And then for the last minute or so, I'm going to bring them over direct heat to get some char and some nice caramelization on the outside. After grilling them up, it comes my favorite time of making all of these videos. Finally get to try our finished product. That looks awesome. All right, first bite we'll try just by itself. See how the sausage turned out. Absolutely delicious. Nice and salty, sweet. Nothing off about the texture with adding the cherries or the pineapple, which is actually what we want. Just adds a little fruity sweetness to it, which is absolutely delicious. Bringing these flavors together in a casing, I think, is a really unique and cool way to show off those same flavor profiles, but just in a different form. So whether you play this in the morning as a brunch with some eggs or hash browns, or you play it at night with some barbecue sauce on the grill, this recipe is going to turn out well either way. For this recipe and the products we used, head to psseasoning.com. If you liked the video, click subscribe for lots of other tutorials. You can check us out on all forms of social media. And until next time, I'm Chef Jed. Thanks for watching.